I'm thrilled to be able to present this information to such a wonderful audience. Um, I think that we're living in very strange times when it seems like the immune system is all anyone cares about. I see that the last presentation was centered on identifying bad viruses and going after them. So I think this will be a nice segue, into how nutrition impacts that as well. I love to start this presentation with this picture, which I think is very telling. You look at the expression on that woman's face. She's got this air of confidence about her. Even though she's being exposed to all these infected people, she doesn't seem to care. And the question is, what the heck is going on with her immune system that allows her to feel this particular way? I can tell you what's going on with her immune system. It's the same thing that's happening in the immune systems of everybody that's listening right now, and in the immune systems of all of your clients. This is a white blood cell, and it's engulfing a bad bacteria, a really bad bacteria called anthrax. This is a process called phago, meaning eating, cytosis, eating the cell. And this is happening right now inside of you. This is a very complex process, but you're not having to do anything to make this happen. And your clients are not having to do anything to make this happen. It's just happening on its own. And the question is, are there good versions and bad versions of it? And what influences the efficiency of this process? Now let's segue into something that's probably a little more familiar. Here's another example of the immune system in action. This is inflammation, pain, swelling, redness, heat, and loss of function. This is what the immune system is up to all the time in your clients. Every time they exercise, every time you exercise, you're engaging in microtrauma. You're tearing muscles. You're tearing apart tissues. It may be not enough to cause the swelling and the redness, but this is how we grow muscles. This is how we make our muscles strong. This is part of the process we call inflammation. It's the normal physiologic defense and repair mechanism that occurs after injury. Well, how do you get injured? Obviously from trauma, which is kind of related to exercise. Every time you exercise, you're getting traumatized, but also infection, lack of oxygen, toxins, or, I've underlined this, unhealthy diets. When the person has excessive or persistent inflammation, that means something is wrong with the immune system. So we want an immune system that engages in inflammation, that helps us heal from injury, but we don't want an immune system that goes overboard, that makes us excessively ill. So the question is, the million-dollar question is healthy immunity unmodifiable? Is it a result of genes? If a person gets sick a lot, or if they have bad responses to injury, is it just because they have bad genes? Or do they have bad luck? Is it chance? Or can immunity be modified by lifestyle, by the way we live, by the way we eat, and possibly by taking dietary supplements? And I will go into some detail about that later. But the answer to all these questions is yes. So yes means yes, genes play a role. Yes, chance plays a role. You can do everything right. But if you get enough exposure to a virus, maybe your body just can't handle that. Or if your client gets exposed to a particular vicious tackle, then we all know what can happen as a result of that. So it can be chance, but it can also be modified by a person's lifestyle. So this is what we're seeing in the medical research. New paradigms, new ways of thinking about immunonutrition. First of all, our immune status is not just lowered because of malnutrition. That's the way it used to be 100 years ago, when people just didn't get the basic nutrients that they need. Now people's immune status is lowered because they're getting older. And aging is something that happens to all of us, right? Not just the little kids. We're all getting older all the time, which means our immune system is in decline. Couple that with naturally occurring stress in our environment or dietary overindulgence, eating the wrong things and eating too much of the wrong things. And that's something that I see in my clients that are athletes all the time. They think that because they're exercising vigorously, they're working out, they're giving their body a good show, that they can get away with eating crap food. And it's not true. They can't get away with it. It will influence their immune system. And how does it influence it? An increased susceptibility to infection, and also an increase in autoimmune disease and or cancer. So all of these things are a result of the immune system not working properly. But what about exercise? What about exercise? This is what the research shows. This is a brand new article that just came out last month that summarized the data. Multiple studies in humans and animals have demonstrated that exercise has a profound effect on the immune system. What's the consensus? That number one, if you sit on your ass all day, that's bad. Being sedentary is bad. So that's one end of the extreme. Not exercising is clearly harmful for the immune system. Moderate intensity exercise, a good workout every day, up to 45 minutes or longer if the person is tolerant of that, is beneficial for an immune response. And the older the person gets, the more beneficial exercise is. The more a person is ill, the more they have chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease, the more they benefit from exercise. But this is something that you're probably all aware of, but maybe you'd rather not think about. Infection burden is reported to be high among high-performance athletes. Get this, second only to injury for number of training days lost. So the amount of infections that people get is second only to injury for the number of training days lost during preparation for major sporting events. So we're talking about a continuum here. On the left is the person that's sedentary. They've got an increased risk in illness. Their immune system isn't surveilling, isn't working as well. Moderate amount of exercise, now that obviously varies depending on what the individual is used to, but goodly amounts of daily exercise are great for you. There's no question about it. But overtraining, especially in conjunction with unhealthy lifestyle, overtraining, unhealthy lifestyle together increases the risk of infection. I will see this all the time in my clients that are triathletes or marathon runners, the runners that go out and they think, okay, the only thing that's important is that I eat sugar because I need fuel. So as long as I get sugar and I can get through the wall at my 21st mile, I can run that marathon and I'll be fine at the end. And then you know what happens? The day after the marathon, they come down with a bad respiratory infection and they stay sick for weeks on end. Sometimes it even takes longer to recover. So this is what the data shows. Now, you have to couple that overtraining, excessive exercise with lifestyle factors that increase the risk of infection. And those factors include poor sleep quality and poor quantity of sleep, psychological stress of competition, extreme environmental conditions like cold and hot, excessive humidity, all of these things that make it really hard to participate in a game or a run or climbing a mountain. Air travel, especially going across multiple time zones, giving the person jet lag, which interferes with their immune function. Obviously, exposure to crowds, that's the one that we're all aware of right now, is that crowds carry infection, and it's not a good idea to be out there shaking hands with lots of different people. But last but not least is poor nutrition. Poor nutrition. And what are we talking about with poor nutrition? Well, First of all, you got to be careful what you eat. Look in the middle of this bag of lettuce from the grocery store. There's a frog in there. Oh my God, if a frog can get in a sealed bag of lettuce, what else can get into the prepared foods that we're eating all the time? So this picture alone should make you aware that we need something to help support our immune system. And now a word from our sponsor that provides us with inflammatory foods. There are clear published studies showing that eating these kind of processed foods, which taste so good, I look at that picture and I think I want to run out and buy everything in the picture. Tastes so good. And yet we know that eating this meal after meal after meal, and that's especially true for our professional athletes or athletes that are on the circuit, they don't have time to prepare meals, so they go out and get fast food. This stuff creates inflammation. There's no question about it. I go to a lot of medical conferences, or at least I used to before the stay-at-home orders, and we would hear all these lectures about what causes heart disease, what causes diabetes, and go out and have a break. And this is what they serve us at break. Inflammatory foods. Not so good for you because they're just as bad as having microtrauma. It can cause the same kind of injury to your system that causes the immune system to overreact. And how does that work? Well, we know that bad fats, rancid fats, refined carbohydrates, and processed foods all increase inflammation and all increase production of free radicals, toxic free radicals, and that those free radicals damage tissue and they damage DNA. When they damage the tissue, they create tissue that looks strange. It's foreign material. Repeated injury does the same thing, creates foreign material. That breaks the tolerance of our immune system and impairs resistance to infection. So here's the scheme of what we're talking about. You see injury at the top. Injury activates white blood cells. In response, white blood cells produce toxic free radicals, superoxide, nitric oxide, hydroxyl radicals, and those things will damage tissue. Now, this isn't a rare thing. This is going on, again, in your body right now, in your athletes' bodies all the time. A small amount of this is normal, but excessive amounts from infection or repeated trauma or even microtrauma or bad foods leads to damaged tissue, and that sucks up the antioxidants that we really need to be getting from our diet, which we're obviously not getting from eating the kinds of foods that I showed you about. And the consequence is what's called oxidative stress, which damages immune function. So here's a summary from a medical journal on nutritional immunology that shows how all these things influence the fitness of the host. That's you or your client. And right in the center is nutritional state. But also on the right is the microbes, the small bacteria and fungi and viruses in the gut, how that interacts with immune function. That can all get blown out of the water if the person's exposed to a toxic virus, can all go round and round in circles to affect the person's total fitness. So nutrition at the top, feeding behavior, and diet are all playing a major role in influencing nutritional state. Now, if you want to improve this, first you have to start with the gut. The GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, is the largest immune organ in the body. 80% of all immune cells in the body are right there in the gut. And we're talking about a surface area that's the size of multiple tennis courts, 200 times more surface area than the skin. And on that surface area, those spread out tennis courts, are trillions and trillions of microbes. Most of these microbes are beneficial, but some of them are not. And the important thing is the balance of these microbes. It's been shown over and over again that healthy athletes have a healthy mix of microbes in their gut. And part of the reason for this is that a major part of the immune system directly interacts with every single thing we put into our mouths. So what's one simple thing that we can do to alter this? Well, we can use probiotics. What are probiotics? Beneficial bacteria that are either sold as foods like yogurt or as dietary supplements. I recommend a combination of both. What do these probiotics do? Healthy balance of intestinal bacteria, and this is especially true when the person is traveling or eating unfamiliar foods, a different kind of diet. We were especially concerned about this in THORNE because we were sponsoring athletes who were going to the Rio Olympics, and we were worried that you could have an athlete travel all the way down to Brazil and eat the wrong food, suddenly get travel diarrhea, and not be able to compete. So this is a huge problem for competition, and it looks like, based on the published research, that using probiotics can help prevent this. But it's got to be the right probiotic. It's got to be one that's researched, and it's got to be very, very good quality so that we know that whatever the person's putting in their mouth is alive and real and going to stay that way. Many published studies showing that probiotics don't just prevent travelers' diarrhea, they prevent respiratory infections and allergic symptoms. Now, there's a lot of research on nutrients, specific nutrients that can actually support immune function. And three of the ways that they do that are by supporting physical barriers, such as supporting the barrier in the gut, supporting the skin, supporting the respiratory tract. Number two, enhancing what's called cellular immunity, enhancing the ability of certain immune cells to fight off viruses and bacteria. And then finally, enhancing production of antibodies. And what are the vitamins that do that? Well, I think of it as the early part of the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E. A, B, C, D, E. Vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, and vitamin E. In addition to that, folic acid, another B vitamin, iron, zinc, copper, and selenium. You can get all of these in a basic multiple vitamin. I do recommend taking extra amounts, though, of the vitamin C and vitamin D, especially during this time where we're concerned about nasty viruses out there attacking us. So let's specifically talk about vitamin D. Some people think this is controversial, whether we should take D or not. I don't understand the controversy. I've used vitamin D in my clients for many, many years. I live in Colorado. We're supposed to have a lot of sun here. Well, yeah, we do. 360 some days of sun a year. So why is it, if you get vitamin D in your skin from sunlight, that so many of my clients have low vitamin D levels? I think it might be that they're using too much sunscreen, or they're wearing protective gear during their sport, which keeps them from getting all the sunlight that they need. So yeah, sunlight's a good source of the vitamin D stimulating photons, but taking a supplement is hard to beat. Why? What does vitamin D do? It enhances our defense against infection and cancer. But at the same time, and this is less appreciated, it prevents excessive inflammation to injury or infection. So vitamin D is properly called an immunoregulatory hormone. It regulates the immune system. It doesn't really stimulate the immune system. Now, what does this have to do, again, with infections? Well, there are researchers that believe there's good reason to think that vitamin D deficiency in winter explains why flu goes up in the winter. Why do we have epidemic influenza? Partly because we're indoors a lot, but also it's not just that we're being exposed to other people with infection. We're not getting the vitamin D that we need. There was a really simple study that was done in Mongolia with 247 school children. Half of them got vitamin D during the winter, only 300 units, not a huge amount. And the other half got a dummy pill. And what did they find? At the end of the winter, there was a 50% drop in upper respiratory infections, URIs, dropped by 50% in kids just from getting this small amount of vitamin D. Then there was a study that was done in Sweden and published in a very prestigious journal, the British Medical Journal. vitamin D supplementation in patients with frequent respiratory infections. So in this study, they took people that had an increased susceptibility to respiratory tract infections, RTIs. They gave them 4,000 units of vitamin D a year. And after the year, they found that there was a huge drop in the number of respiratory infections, especially the respiratory infections that required people to take antibiotics. So we have very good data, multiple published studies. Finally, a study that was published in the British Medical Journal in 2017. This was a meta-analysis, a study of studies. They looked at 25 different studies with 11,000 people in it, and they concluded, quote, vitamin D supplementation was safe and it protected from acute respiratory tract infection overall. What's not to like? Why shouldn't all of our athletes be taking this rather than running the risk of getting an infection and getting thrown out of competition? So I've talked to you about micronutrients, basic multivitamins, A, B, C, D, E. Zinc would be included in that, folate. A supplement that people aren't as aware of is glutamine. Glutamine is an amino acid that's found in proteins. It's one of the most abundant amino acids in the body, but apparently, based on the research, we get deficient in glutamine, especially after exercise. So here's what this research study showed. Number one, athletes undergoing intense prolonged training or participating in endurance races suffering increased risk of infection due to apparent immunosuppression. So I've already told you that. So overdoing it, over-exercising depletes the body of glutamine. And when you measure glutamine levels in the bloodstream, you see that they drop with this prolonged exhaustive exercise. And it's thought that this is a major contributor to why the immune system doesn't work as well, and the person is then more susceptible to infection. So glutamine turns out to be a really important fuel for cells in the immune system, and actually has a stimulatory effect when it's depleted. In this study, they gave, I believe it was around 5 grams of glutamine a day. It's given as a powder. It has basically no taste to it, so you can put it in a drink. I recommend that over getting a sports drink that's got sugar and caffeine, a lot of other things. Just take regular L-glutamine powder right after exercise. So put it in a drink, put it in water, and this showed in this particular study to have a beneficial effect on the level of subsequent infections. So glutamine, terrific stuff. Can't say enough good things about it. Safe and very palatable. And ending, also want to talk about something called quercetin. Quercetin is a yellow pigment that all of us are eating, assuming that we eat salads, fruits, and vegetables. It's found in tea, onions, apple skins, grapes, berries, tomatoes. So we're all getting it in smaller quantities. However, research has been shown that in higher amounts, especially as a dietary supplement, it prevents the release of histamine involved in allergic reaction, and it also inhibits other inflammatory mediators. So it keeps the level of inflammation under control. In addition, it's been shown to prevent growth of numerous viruses. Now, quercetin as a supplement is not well absorbed. So if you're going to give it to your clients, I recommend a form called quercetin phytosome. That's just lecithin made from sunflower, kind of oil that enhances absorption, well researched, and this is something that's actually exclusive to THORNE. So we can proudly say that we sponsored its development, and we've been using it in our athletes for quite some time now. Typical dose is not a lot, 1 to 2 capsules every day. So what have I told you in this short presentation? Number one, diet exerts a major influence on immune function. Detrimental effects of diet can result from being deficient in nutrients, especially micronutrients, or excessive inflammatory components, burgers and fries and sticky buns. We can optimize immune function with the right dietary intake, simply eating more fresh fruits and vegetables, along with targeted nutrients and certain dietary supplements. So if you're going to recommend this to your clients, why would you recommend THORNE? Well, THORNE meets the highest pharmaceutical grade standards for all of its supplements. We only use ingredients that are validated for clinical research. So everything that we release, everything that we sell to our clients has got clinical research, like some of the research that I've showed you, showing that they're safe and they're effective. THORNE offers the most comprehensive, diverse line of NSF certified for sport products on the market. We repeatedly screen for all WADA and USADA banned substances. And I got to make a comment about this. I had a client come in last year from Colorado Springs, and I asked him what he did, and he said, I'm a lawyer for USADA. So we started talking about all the nutritional products on the market, and he basically said, you would not believe the garbage that's out there. He said, I can walk you through a health food store and show you all these name brand products that are out there. We've analyzed them, and they are basically full of garbage, full of banned substances, contaminants, all kinds of things. This is something that THORNE really goes out of their way to do, to screen for all these banned substances. As a result, we have been vetted and endorsed by the USOC, and we partner with multiple national governing bodies, including the USA Triathlon, Hockey, and Rugby. As you know, we're a major partner of Altus, UFC, and also we're the only nutritional company that's been vetted by the Mayo Clinic to meet their acceptable standards. So THORNE is the choice of U.S. national teams and more than 100 professional sports teams, including championship winning teams of the MLB, NHL, and the NFL. So with that, I want to bring it to a close, and thank you so much for giving me your time today. I hope that you will think about what's going on inside your client's bloodstream, and we'll do something to help keep them from getting sick and staying in competition. Thank you very much.